Welcome to the MF, that is the masculine feminine quadrant, where we'll be breaking down distinctions and exploring the four corners of the two dual forces of masculine and feminine creation. Join us for some deeply reflective and penetrating conversation and an exchange of energies to open your body, your mind, and your being.
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome back to another episode of the Motherfucking Podcast. I'm here with beautiful Shaka as always every weekend. This is how we doing it. And yeah, this is our 6th episode, and we are bringing in this beautiful cadence and this beautiful harmony coming up together, and we want to put the center focus on wholeness and embodying that. And what does that actually mean? Now, we've talked about so many things with the dynamics between masculine and feminine, the different quadrants in between us, how we dance between these polarities, what outfits we wear, how we change our masks, what this council is, and going through the cognitive, going through the esoteric, and all these different layers. And this is really the journey, and this is still embodying exactly what we brought to this podcast, which is really coming to less about understanding this dynamic, but really developing a relationship with it. And yes, it is a relationship with yourself, but also this relationship with others outside and how we interact. And this episode is really about the wholeness of all of that. We've kind of taken this thing that we know is one, and that all is one, and we're all one consciousness and all that good stuff. But it's not a matter of just looking at the whole. It's can we take that apart, look at all the different pieces, accept all those pieces, and bring that in and really truly embody that. And we do that in our masculine as well as our feminine. So this has been kind of the buildup, and like I described is it almost felt like to me like this crescendo, of building up and reaching to this point of this wholeness. And we're going to talk about a lot between how this looks in through time, but also through the relationships and the dynamics of how they play out in this stage that we're in of a world. So without further ado, we're going to take you into this beautiful journey of wholeness embodied. And I hope that you can open your mind just a little bit to step out of the segmented and the fragmented, and to actually look at the beauty that is all of us as a whole, as you are masculine and as you are feminine. So yeah, Chakra, I already know how you are, but how is whole to you? Yeah.
I once heard a quote, I don't know where it's from or who said it, but and it was something like God is the puzzle and we are the pieces.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And it's like,
I resonate with that.
It's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one. And I guess that's what wholeness represents, that we sometimes we're taking things apart, we're separating things, we're maybe looking at things individually or in isolation, but actually there's a moment where we zoom out and we get this whole entire picture. And I feel like the wholeness, and that can be, like you said, like globally, we could look across the world, could be in a community, a smaller community, could be within ourselves, but it's just where we're able to really take in the whole of the different separate parts, or the different pieces and parts of what makes that whole. Yeah
I feel exactly that, with the sense of fragmentation, right? It's like, I look at it from multiple different aspects, and a lot of people definitely tell me like, oh well, you can't just look from up there, and you're also down here. And yeah, okay, great, but we have that ability and we have that capability to look at everything. And I feel like for me, just on my journey with wellness and just cultivating like my vision and my sight and my clairvoyance and all these different things, it's like I see everything as a body, you know? And with learning a body, just like when I went through personal training, you know, for example, you learn the muscles, you learn the vascicles, you learn the different systems, and everything, you start to understand that everything has a function, everything is complementing each other, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Let me throw that into the metaphysical, you know? And it's like this as above, so below kind of thing. And it's like, okay, now that's happening in me, not just in a physical level, but on a spiritual level. Like we're fragmented. We have all of these different personalities, and you're not the same person that you are with your mom or that you are with your friends, or even some of your friends that you like hang out with and have brunch. Maybe you're not the same way that when you go out on Friday and you go with your top friends and you go like shake it and get crazy, you know, like there's different friends. Like you, when you in a certain vibe, you call up different friends for that vibe. You know what I mean? Like you just can't call up like Beth to go, you know, go to the club or something. You're like, nah, I gotta call Lakeisha, you know? You're like, we about to go do that. So it's like looking at these different fragments and how they express. And, you know, like we spoke about the different cognition too, and, you know, these different aspects of the mind and how we do that as well. But when you have that ability to step out and zoom out a little bit, and yes, we kind of play with this framework and this facets of masculine and feminine, and for me that doesn't necessarily mean gender like how we think of it, like, oh, what's your gender, masculine, feminine, binary, something else or whatever. You know, it's, for me, gender represents generation, you know, like how are we generating, how am I generating as this masculine now? And I see that as a fragment, but also to identify and point out and give some type of acknowledgement to that feminine side as well, and not what we think or what we see as feminine. You know, like as I see you, like I'm not going to go put my hair in a bun because I feel like, oh, like that's feminine, let me get in touch with my feminine side. No, it's like, how does this feminine energy in me want to represent and want to express? And for me, that is the embodiment of wholeness, you know, the state and quality and condition of whole, you know. And I'm not saying that like we can ever, I don't think we can ever be whole. I think it's a state that we can actually bring ourselves to look, observe, appreciate, have some gratitude, then be like, all right, I'm gonna go back down there and be a puzzle piece like I am. You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually think, and this was, and the funny thing is that this episode and this title was actually what we wanted to start the podcast out as, you know? So this is kind of like the centerpiece of it all, was like, we wanted to name this Wholeness Embodied and build around that. And it's just so interesting how we took a smaller and more fragmented version and decided to build from there. So we would definitely love to hear from you guys what you think about that, taking that position from the masculine and the feminine and coming into these and growing into these different facets that are a little bit bigger and a little bit wider. So feel free to like drop a comment, respond to the video or the podcast, wherever you're listening to this at. And definitely hit that like and subscribe button, because we see y'all watching, but y'all be lurking. So we need y'all to hit that. And I'm hitting y'all early on the ASAP, because I know if y'all skip through it or whatever the case is, this is where y'all need to do it. And best believe I'm gonna remind you later. But without further ado, let's get into these questions, because I love this episode. I love this episode. Like we always kind of go through the episode beforehand, and Shaka knows this. Like we have like this little like dynamic that's in there, and we're just like, oh, so what do you think about this? And then we both try to like dig the answers out of each other, like with the questions. So it's like sometimes we have these questions for you guys, and we think that these are like really juicy and provocative and deep, thoughtful questions, and we really put a lot of intention into them, because we also, as practitioners, want you guys to utilize these questions as well. You know, you can take them into your meditations, bring them to your partners, whatever the case is. They're definitely multi-use, but we always kind of like try to get it out of each other. And I can't even tell you how many like episodes have already happened before this episode. So yeah, like this first question was like, it was really um I think nurturing, I want to say, and no, more like enriching. Yeah. And it really led us into a different direction. So, and I love how this question kind of held you the other day when we went over it.
Mhm.
So, I want to ask you again, how can you empower your masculine and feminine side with a new habit from that opposing side?
Mm. Mm. So good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you know me, I'm always like reticent with the gendered aspect. Like I see things
Uh-huh.
energy, I suppose, right? And then so I guess we think of the feminine as like kind of flow state, kind of maybe a bit softer, a bit more gentle, a bit more receptive, slower, like the yin.
Mm.
And then masculine energy, obviously a lot like stronger, action based, maybe a bit more forceful, a little bit more like, and then I just think
I
of
don't
that.
know why I just pictured Rush Hour in my head when you just said that. You're like stronger, action based. I'm like, huh, is his name Jackie Chan? Sorry, you
I
put
mean,
that image in my head.
well, it's a pretty good, epitome of like masculine energy, right? Warrior, like action taker, like, saves the day.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, and so I guess energetically, I'm thinking about like when you asked this question, it made me think about when I was in my early 20s and I used to do dance, but I wasn't ever like I didn't grow up a dancer. I kind of came to dance like late in my teens. And then I
Mm-hmm.
used to do street dance. So we used to do like lock in, pop in, like
What?
street dance. Yeah, like real, and
No,
yeah.
no. Stop the tape. What? You was a pop locker?
No, I wasn't a pop. No. Sorry.
Oh,
Hold on. Let me
wait.
correct the audience.
Nah, you was out there with the cardboard box on the floor, spinning with your bucket hat. Yeah, and then you land. Yeah. Oh my God. I can't. All right.
I definitely wasn't. No, I was more a singer. So I came to dance to kind of put my performance as a singer. And then so I was
Okay.
a late starter, really. So I wouldn't necessarily call myself a dancer, but I really got into it. Loved dance a lot.
Mm.
And then I remember one of my dance teachers, he said to me, he was like, Shaka, like you got great presence, like you're really strong, you're like really like forceful in your kind of
Mm-hmm.
street dancing and your presence. And he was like, but I kind of want you to have a little bit more like femininity. And he was like, go to ballet, go to ballet. 'Cause
Yeah.
I didn't, hadn't gone to dance school. So then I went and did ballet basically to learn
Yeah.
to be more like graceful, hold myself up and like, and then so I think when you asked this question, it made me think of that. And I was like, oh yeah. And I don't know if that's like a masculine, feminine, but I guess that's kind of how it felt. Like it was energetically
Mm.
like, okay, I was really comfortable in that kind of like strong, clean lines, like kind of like, lock in, pop in kind of energy. And then, but actually I needed to learn to be more fluid and like also hold myself up and be lighter on my feet because that's kind of the
Mm.
nature of ballet. Um,
Mm.
and then I guess, and I think we've talked about this regularly in the podcast, like we all have aspects of like sides of ourselves that we're less comfortable with, like more like
Mm-hmm.
things that we kind of comfortable, we find really easy to embody, and
Mm-hmm.
then things less easy to embody. So again, like kind of flipping things on the head, really. Like when I was younger, again, I was a lot more fiery, to be honest. Like,
Mm.
generally women aren't generally in touch with their anger. Like that's the association. But this was the opposite for me. Like very, very like, I mean, my street name was Rage. So this was like
What
yeah,
the hell?
I was
Oh
like,
my God, I'm learning so much in this episode. Sheesh. Whoa. Raging Shaka.
Rage. I
Pop,
look, rock
lock it
on
and
with your
dropping
bad
it.
soul.
Right.
I had my Afro puffs, man. Well, they're not Afros, but still. But
You
yeah,
rock
so
rough and tough with your Afro
Afro
puff.
rage, rock on with your bad self.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but yeah, so I was like, really, this was my energy in, like when I was younger, and then it wasn't until I got older, and then I found yoga, and I really was able to kind of like tune into a different energy, a more like passive energy,
Mm,
more subtle energy, which maybe is more, maybe say, if you want to say, the feminine
mm-hmm,
aspect. So I feel like that's been my journey really in terms of
mm.
developing. And now, if you ask me this now, what do I need to develop more of? Yeah, I didn't.
Well, it was more so how can you empower that side with a new habit from your opposing side? By the way, you're gonna see me look up a couple times. There is, if you guys don't know where I'm at, I live in Colombia currently, and I'm on the side of a mountain, but there is a baby bird nest up here. There's actually two, but the mom just came home with a bunch of food, and these birds are just, there's like one, two, four of them just staring at me right now, little baby birds. But sorry, sorry, not sorry.
No, not
Uh,
sorry. Beautiful.
but anyway,
I love this. I thought you were going to say tarantula, and I was like, oh my God.
oh yeah, no,
No.
cute little baby birds. Oh, she's out. Okay, sorry. Continue. What is this supporting habit?
Hmm. I don't know. I know I should have, like, yeah, I should have
I
been more
mean,
prepared for this, because I was kind of
I
more
mean,
thinking of the past rather than now, because I feel like I'm not sure
yeah.
if there's anything.
But what I feel from that is like, and I think this is the part like that I'm hearing this other side of exactly what you said is like something was in you as far as like expression, like movement and dance, and like that was a sense of like how you express that masculine energy. And you had this way of this new habit being ballet, and that kind of helped that feminine helped support that masculine energy, and this is what I'm just taking from what you said, and that this, I guess you had mentioned like the anger and like rage or whatever was after like you got a little bit older, but there was still this like support from that grace, of
Mm.
being able to move that way and having that touch of femininity that was there, however that may look now, and it just presented itself in a different form of movement, which was yoga, so yeah, I feel like the way that you just explained it, you didn't necessarily like, specifically say all those things, but and that's what I actively just took from that of what you were saying. And I think that's a beautiful story of support because that also reflects
Mm.
um like how what came up for me with this question was the sense of empowering, right? And I feel like this has always been a process with me in a sense of n- not for nothing, I've always felt pretty balanced and had a really clear image of like what these energies were like within me. I remember being younger, and this is, just as an example, when people used to see me because I was always around like older males, like I was like, the 9-year-old kid around like 18 and 20-year-olds, and like there were some dudes that would always consistently like, oh Max, like you mad soft. And it was like, like what the fuck does that even mean? But I was always like the witty one that always had like a comeback, or like I would cut ass on them, or like talk about their mom or some craziness, right? But it gave me this sense of understanding that what this masculine energy could be, and that it's just energy, period. And
Mm.
yeah, I do feel like I did have a lot of contact with the feminine energy because of me being raised by my mom, but she was also very much in her masculine, but she was also a Cancer, so she was super soft. But also there was a lot of women around me, and in that sense, it was good because I could observe what femininity looked like, but
Mm.
also I had this support and like this empowerment from the masculine side of me, of which later on turned in, like when I was in my 20s, turned into like, the savior and the martyr. And, I had to go through that phase of like the wounded healer, because I'm thinking like, oh, well, like I can help you and all these different things. But it was this sense of having this almost like worship and honor and duty to women and to serve that. So for me, this was for how that represented in me. It was like, in my 20s, yeah, I had this let's say over embellished masculine facet,
Mm.
excuse me, that was just around, and it was always accentuated in a different way and always expressed and looking for these different ways, but it was always supported by that feminine aspect, of when I was younger. And now how that looks, what a new habit that I feel like I've cultivated is this sense of union between the two.
Mm.
And for me, it's a practice. I attempt to focus on the practice every day, is like daily, of complementing one another, and when I wake up in the morning, like, yeah, some days I want to get right out of bed, hit my pull-ups, hit my push-ups, and fucking work my body, and it's like, no, I need to be strict, I need to be this, I need to be firm, this is it. But then after, it's like,
Mm.
I'm gonna go through my slow movement. I'm gonna put on some music. I'm gonna, practice my cymatics. I'm gonna let out, long exhales, definitely noise, all of these different things, and get more in tune with that. Because
Mm.
I have found personally, empowerment is the the internal support of these two energies,
Mm.
this
Mhm.
masculine taking care of this feminine by remaining strong, remaining firm, remaining sure, remaining clear, remaining that way, in that space. And for that feminine side is also to support that masculine by also nurturing and caring, and making sure that after every shower, even if it's a quick shower, I make sure I put my coconut oil on and take care of my body and take care of my skin, and do all these things. And yes, I'm living out here on the side of a mountain, and before this looked like, I used to go to the barber shop and have somebody else do it for me, but now it's like taking care of myself in that way, so it's those little things of grace. And um yeah, I mean, that's the part of the accentuation of that feminine aspect and how it can support. And all of
Mm.
what that does is also it empowers for me, that masculine side to also be there, and vice versa.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. And I really love, like, there was just a few things that you said, like, I wanted to pick up on. Like, I feel like what you were talking about, like the way those two energies support each other. And that is
Mm,
kind of energetic support within yourself, within your own body, but it also
mm,
is mirrored in the outside with like how we complement one another. And that's people in general, men and women, or, but generally how we're all working with different energies and then we're complementing each other. But when you can have that within yourself, where you've got, like you say, this kind of dynamism within yourself, um,
mm,
that is like, really, that's what we're talking about today, like wholeness.
mm,
And there was something you said as well earlier when you talked about like, do we ever get hot? Like, do we ever like, become whole?
mm,
I was thinking when we were talking about whole, I think it got me thinking about holism or holistic well-being. And then
mm,
again, I feel like holistic is like not necessarily like the whole, but it's like, how are the component parts working with one another, and are we drawing each component out to play at its best, and and bring into the whole, and so, like, to create yeah, like a stronger whole, a stronger whole system, basically.
mm,
And that's kind of like, we're not there focusing on each part, like, oh, that needs to be at 50, that needs to be at 50, that needs to be 50. Well, no, actually, like,
right.
because it's all complementing each other, actually everything is working exactly as it is. We see that in nature and ecology. in the way
Right.
all these different parts are working with each other. And
Right.
and I just would say, just quickly, actually, I would change my mind. I'm changing my answer a little bit because I was thinking, just as you were speaking, I was like, oh
You're
yeah,
like, but wait, there's
yeah, I was like,
more.
wait, hold on. I just forget. Like I was like, oh yeah, because my practice is Ashtanga, right? And Ashtanga is a very strong, dynamic practice, but within it, there is a necessity to build both strength and flexibility. And so I realized, like, actually on the mat, I really get to speak to those two sides of myself, which are still present to some extent in my, in my being, which is like that kind of real need. And even like going to the gym, like putting on my, my techno music, just blasting it out and like lifting weights and just being like, Rah! You know what I mean? And that kind of like that side of myself that gets exercised. And then that kind of flexibility, that receptivity, that softness, the relaxation, and like but I feel like my yoga practice has both, and really builds both. So it really helps, which is perfect for me because it really helps me build like those two component parts at the same time, and like you say, complement one another.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's perfect. Just even kind of bringing that side to it is like the practicality of it, because for me also empower is also what we do externally, and when I think of empower, it's like, what do we do internally to, tether those things down? So yes, I have this mental construct of, my masculine, my feminine want to support each other energetically and spiritually and all these different things, but also how does that look, so if you're listening to this and you're looking at these different things of like, oh, your mind is starting to open up and you're saying like, oh, okay, I'm just getting in tune with my masculine, or I'm just getting in tune with my feminine, or maybe I'm, toning down my masculine or my feminine, whatever the case is, it's like, we have to understand like the ways that looks. So, so just like for you as having like Ashtanga, and then you also have the gym. And it's like, that is your release valve, but then there's also this other one that gives you this strict and also the both, because Ashtanga is, you said you practice it for like 6 days straight, right?
6 days a week.
And
I mean, I practice 4 or 5 days a week, if I'm honest, but it's a 6 day a week practice. So traditionally you practice 6 days a week. I've gone through phases in my life where, I've practiced 6 days.
So it's just really about like that strictness and like the order of that, and that is that masculine energy, expressing itself in whatever way. So I think it's good to know that self that is within, and understand that there is this wholeness. And for me, I want to also just kind of plug this in here is, I've always taken a position of like what wholeness is, and whatever you hear me say from now on, it's not in a sense of like, oh, it's whole and it's like God and it's universe, and it's like, no, that is all, yes, it's internal and everything is made of the same material, cool. But I think more in the practical of learning, and we've spoken about this a lot, about learning through contrast, right? And for me, I think of everything on balance, right? And if everything has a spectrum, and there's one all extreme to the left and one extreme to the right, then there's a middle point that you have, right? And everything, that's how I see it, from my left eye, my right eye, which is, masculine and feminine. And it's like, if I can look at something for this extreme and for this extreme, and then focus my vision and my sight right into the middle, then I can see both of them. But if I look towards one side, I can't see the other one, like your peripheral vision is all just gray. But if you look into the middle of something, you're able to see both of them at the same time. And for me, that is what I see as wholeness, to finally see the whole circle. So even with this practice, it's, like for me, I have, my exercise and my body movement, but there's also other ways of allowing that, and just being cognizant of it, because yes, we can have that practice, but there's also the higher point of why we're doing those things. And I think that's the part where, the second question kind of came in, and it is about, what part of ourself are we willing to transcend? And I think there can be some preconceived notions as to what transcend is, but for me, I see transcendence not in a way of like, oh my God, I'm leaving my body and I'm a light being and I'm just everything, and it's like I've fucking disperse into sprinkly gold dust and then I'm not my body anymore. Like, no, it's not that. It's not some outer body experience. It's, for me, it's a process, and it's a process of letting go as to what was and finding and repurposing an alignment as to what is. And for me, that's the same thing with this simultaneous contrast. When I approach something and something comes in, and there's this support that I need more support to get it done. And it's in that masculine. I need to be in my masculine for a certain amount of time to get a project done or whatever the case may be. And I need that support. And I know when to like breathe and focus and like calm myself and calm my storm. And like I can move through with ease and balance. Or when there's those other parts where I need to like really take care of myself, but I really need to like keep going and look at the long pace and nurture and take care of myself. And I personally believe that that period is the letting go of what I think masculinity is, what I saw masculinity as, and also what I thought femininity was, and what I saw femininity as. And you're able to see those two extremes, see what I think about this masculine side, and see what I saw the same thing on the feminine side, and then look in the middle and create what you want. For me, that's a level of transcendence, because you're no longer just focused on one side and you're not just going in a cyclical motion. You kind of get to this point and you settle in there, and then you have a direction, and it's like, for me, like again with physics, it's the same thing. Like if you take a pencil, right, and you put a dot on the piece of paper, right, the dot is not moving, there's no motion, right? But if you take the pen off, it's circle there, right? Now, if I put the pen in the same place, or pencil, whatever fucking case is, I love pencils. You draw a circle, there's movement, right? But you're still in a two-dimensional field. You're not going anywhere. The circle is just happening. But it's not until we start to give it more of a direction, then it starts to turn into a spiral. And that, for me, is like a representation of transcendence. If we can look at our masculine, we look at our feminine, and we keep this dynamic going, and we understand this cycle, we're in this, everybody is in this cycle in our own spiritual process, whether it's in our lineage, our generational trauma, whatever the case is, whatever narrative you want to hold on to. We are our masculine, which is our father, and our feminine, our mother, playing out in this one existence. And that's the fragmentation coming into a whole. We're already born into this world wholly and embodied. It's just that we end up fragmentizing ourselves again. And then it's this constant, we fragmentize and then we see this oneness, and then we fragmentize and we see this oneness. And it's this constant fluctuation, but I feel like when we get stuck in that place of holding on to something, of what masculinity looks like, what femininity looks like, we have to ask ourselves this question, like what part am I willing to transcend, and transcend just means like let go and realign to what I believe that this is, what I am choosing to create, just like if you want to go into the esoteric side and look at God, or the universe, or Allah, or Buddha, or Shaka, whatever you want to say that it is, it's, I'm pretty sure that if it was just all, because we say all is one, right? So if I'm just there, right, it's just me. I ain't doing nothing. I'm here. If I got all this power, what am I gonna do with it? Why wouldn't I fragmentize myself? Why wouldn't I turn myself into a deer, into a bird, into a human, into a Buddhist, into all these different things to test my capability, put these finite things to express myself, and then ultimately come back to oneness again, and that's what we're all doing. We're all coming back to a remembrance. So I feel like, yes, there's a consistent willingness to let go of many parts of myself. And I think, well, no, more so I feel that when I am practicing those actions and finding those practices in the real time, that's when I'm actually letting those things go to transcend. So it's always a transcendental moment for me.
Beautiful. No, really, really beautiful. I really love that, what you're saying about kind of your concepts, your ideas of like what masculine or feminine should look like, and that kind of attachment. I guess what I was hearing is like a kind of attachment to these kind of external markers, essentially, and like just letting that go in order to just allow yourself to align with what is. You know, again, you could call that God if you want to, or, but you know what I mean, but just get yourself into alignment. And I think definitely feel something similar, like in terms of like transcendence, because I think this question, like, yeah, I can't help but think when you say transcendence, I can't help but think, yeah, like what yeah. Yeah, what am I willing to like rise above? Like, where can I let go? You're absolutely right. Like I think we really see it the same. Like, where can you just let go? And I think for me, it's very similar. These baby birds. Ah. I can hear them like chirping every now and again. I'm like hearing them chirping. It's too sweet.
Yeah, I hear like one or two of them.
But yeah, no, I feel like the parts of myself that I'm like wanting to like transcend are like the ego, like anything that sort of stops me from really being loved. And I see it so much, and I think, and you're so right, because it kind of comes in waves. Like you get close to it, you feel it, and then somehow you find yourself away from it again, and then you have to find your way back again. And it's like, it kind of feels like that. And and every time, you kind of come away, I think you get a chance to notice and see like, oh, where are my barriers? Where are my walls? Where have I, like, where have I created hardness inside of myself? Like, where am I creating those barriers? And then you get to connect again. And then that, the healing takes place. But it is like that. Like, I do think that is the nature of it. Like, you kind of you get real close to it. You really see it. You get real in touch with it. And then somehow you're on the path and you suddenly go, ah, I'm like far away from it again. Like, how has that happened?
Right.
I mean,
all right. Oh shit, I'm at work again.
Yeah.
I was just in my bed, laying there, ever so whole. How did I transcend into this desk?
But it's true.
I don't know. Maybe that's somebody's life. It ain't my life, but somebody out there hear it.
That was so funny.
If you hear it and you resonate with that, hit the like button. Matter of fact, hit subscribe because you need more of this. More of this medicina.
Yes.
No, but yeah, I feel like exactly what you were saying is like that dance between, it's like a double helix, and it's encoded in our DNA.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And then it's like you said about like, if you were the Godhead, like if we were like of course it makes sense, you would like separate yourself into like all of the things that you see in the world, all of the different things that we see and experience life through different sides. And like we always get, to a certain extent, a very limited perspective, like from our human form. But every now and again we get to like really get in touch with that essence. And I think yeah, like if you ask me what am I wanting to transcend, just anything that like, like there's like
I want to fine
quote
tune. I want to throw you a little curveball though. I want to,
okay,
just because exactly what you said right there would be, what would be that point of clarity, or that moment that you get when you come in touch with it? Because I feel like that's what it feels like to me when I'm in those modes of creating that flow state. And for me, like you said, that distance, like in that double helix, when you come all the way out here, I think a lot of people just kind of like drift off and they think like, oh, I'm never going to come back to it. And then you keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
And for me, that's not transcendence. It's having that faith when you're all the way out here that it's going to happen again. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's the thing that you go through. So what is that part for you? Like that moment of clarity and that point, what does that look like in Shaka's life?
What, when I come back to the point again, when I get back close, or when I'm far away?
Well, where do you feel like is most transcendent for you?
Well, when you get close, and I think sometimes you don't even know you've been far away until you reconnect again with that energy of like
Mm,
divine love. And then like that's when you feel like I feel it as like grace. It's like grace, forgiveness, like unconditional love. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and then I see all my humanness, and I'm like, man, I don't deserve this. And then like
mm,
obviously like the divine love is like, no, this is like what this is who you are. Like this is your, like, you know, your divine birthright. And then there's that comes with then humility. And then I think when that's why I'm always about humility with my life, because I'm always like, you know, just just never want to, you know, speak with just the absolute confidence. Like I just always like, you know, it's through grace. Like I live my
mm,
life and it's through the grace of God, like how I would
mm,
describe it. So for me, that is the point of transcendence. And I mean, you can feel it in different moments. Like, you know, you can feel it with a loved one, you can feel it in nature. I feel it sometimes on my mat. I feel it sometimes with medicines, you know, with
mm,
health. Sometimes when I'm having a really good dinner, um, yeah, like good food or something like that. Like
mm.
some just gives me so much, like fills my cup so
Yeah.
much. And then I'm like, oh yeah, this is it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Because I feel like that is the part where, we're talking about this embodiment,
Mm.
and we feel it in our body, and this is what for me has been that wholeness, it's like when I'm not looking at that extreme and not looking at this extreme, and I'm finally just kind of like zeroing in the middle, and I finally hit that sweet spot. Just
Mhm.
for me as a man, I've taken a position in my life, in my spiritual journey, and my human journey, is for balance and
Mm.
stillness. And not in a sense of like, oh, I'm going to perfect everything and make everything balanced and it needs to stay perfect and needs to stay still. It's like, no, when I'm centered in that, then I know that I'm coming to that and I can recognize it when it happens. And that's the connection.
Mm.
That's it right there. And it's like, whether it be taking a minute, like right before you have your food, and you just like really connect with it, not just sit there and be like, oh, yep, thank God for this food. It's going to be great. Let it nourish my body. And then just jump into it. It's like, really try it one day and like sit back and just really connect to what is actually like. Think about all the ingredients that are in the food, how it's going to touch your taste buds, the fingers that put it together. Well, depends where it was cooked. But anyway, the people that put it together, like why you're sitting down, the ability to have this, like
Mm.
actually like practice gratitude. I think sometimes when we get into that state, because just exactly what you were saying was with this grace and, like you talk about this humility, that's huge because I come from New York, so we don't really do too much of that. But it's great because when I see it nowadays, I notice it and I'm like, oh, shout out to you, humility. Um, so yeah, that's also been a practice as well, you know. But no, seriously, it's like
London's the
it's
same.
also like, really? Oh,
I mean, it's,
I
well, maybe
don't
not.
know.
It's not like New York,
Uh,
but in the same way, like that's like,
yeah, because
yeah,
we
humility
just
is
we
not part
just
of
say
the,
it like that's it.
yeah.
That's it. Nada más. And I feel like, yeah, like you said, those are the parts when we can really connect to really fully pull that in. And I think that also ties into that support of that masculine and feminine, when we have that empowerment and we have that support from these two energies, and we're looking at that practice and we look at how we make it whole, however that looks into your day. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily, to say that, there's obviously like a lot of people out there that find it difficult to make that connection or to feel that wholeness, or they might be like, oh well, wholeness, like you can't be whole, like who are you trying to be, God, you trying to be enlightened? And it's like, no, but at least reach for that and take some of these practices and learn yourself, and it's like this is a part of building that relationship, and like the same thing with you know, like you said, with food, you know, that's the same thing with me. Like I love to cook, and I say I love to cook because when I am cooking, I am love, you
Mm.
know. And it doesn't matter if I'm cooking for somebody or for myself. And my problem is I love to cook so much, but I also be fasting. I also don't like to eat. I also eat like one meal a day. So it's like now I gotta like figure out ways to navigate like my human while also still filling the cup. And then my human's like, chill, like I don't want all of that. And it's like, you're gonna take all this love and like I'm gonna stuff it down your face, literally, you know? So it's like, you know, finding those different ways of how that masculine and that feminine energy could just really live in this
Yeah.
whole being and be embodied, you know? Because when we look at it, you know, as adults, sorry, go ahead. What were we gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think what I'm hearing, receiving from you when you're talking about balance is not just about, oh, everything has to be, you know what I mean? You're not like
Perfect. Yeah.
spinning cups or like, you know what I mean, or spinning plates like this. It's a sense of like actually you're honoring those parts of yourself and what they need. And
Mm-hmm.
you have like real, and that's why, you know, when you're talking about like self-studying, like look, like really like studying the self and then honoring those parts of yourself, and then you can start to be like, then you're sort of gathering those different tools that speak to those different parts of yourself,
Right.
and you know, you're strengthening those parts of yourself, and that's how then you can find wholeness. It's not necessarily that, like I said, you're leveling out
Right.
like this. It's just, but you see, you have like these practices that really honor those different energies like
Right.
that you have.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing is like what you said is to really, and like this is why I focus so much on etymology and like shifting the way that we look at these words, like, you know, even transcend or empowering or, you know, balance even. It's like when we think of balance, we think exactly like that, like, oh, I'm trying to be perfect and you're trying to control everything. It's like, no, I'm not actually. What I'm looking at is my own sustainability. Like I like to have balance and peace within myself that brings me peace. So if I know that all of these cups exist and I know exactly what to pour in all of them, just like how organized my spice rack is, you know, I'm like, I know if the lights went out and it's completely dark, I could still cook a meal because I know exactly where all my things are, you know. But also, I'm saying that in a say in a way of, for example, right, when we get put into situations where we're not given what we need, what
Mm-hmm.
happens? We get into a reactive state, right? Because I'm not getting what I need from this person. I'm talking about relationally, you know, with anything. You can walk into a supermarket or you can be with your partner. And when you get into these situations where you're not necessarily getting what you need, then you start to panic. You start to panic out of lack. I'm not getting this. I'm not receiving this love. And then you don't know how to give it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is like that balance because now I am certain and I'm sure and I'm positive and I'm firm and secure in this state that nobody can take my peace.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can. I'm like, yes, it's a little bit far off to say that I'm unwavering, but also, you know, like we spoke about this the other day about allowing life to touch you, you know, and yes, I am movable, but I also know that I'm a mountain, you know, and when I'm there and my presence, like I'm flowing and I'm in that space, but it takes a real sage or a transcendent being to move me, you know, because it's about the clarity of it, you know. And I know that I can put myself into certain situations because
Mm-hmm.
I know that I know how to give myself what I need. I know how my feminine supports my masculine. I know how my masculine supports my feminine, and I know what the practices look like. And I've cultivated and created many ways for them to thrive and not just be in survival mode so that when you get put into a situation, we're not blaming another person or walking into a situation expecting other people to do these things, and then we start projecting and doing all these things. So this is like the practicality and I guess the coding that's in the back end of like all of, you know, for me. And um I guess I would say like I encourage like my clients as well, you know, whether it be through personal training, whether it be through therapeutics, whether, you know, whatever it may be, even like my friends, you know, I always embellish upon finding those practices and really looking at it because it's also the same way with because we're adults now, right? And we want to talk about how we adult, and then we want to complain about adulting, and then blah blah blah. But it's also like when we're looking at that other end and we take that adult position, what's the other end of that spectrum? Our inner child. And when we were as a child, we didn't know all of these things. We didn't have this capacity to expand. We didn't have the experience of life as a human. And then also on top of that, maybe sometimes our parents or our uncles or our sisters or our brothers didn't give us what we needed, and all these different ways that people loved us and showed us what love was. We started to develop narratives onto what that really meant, like maybe I need more affection, like we spoke about in the last episode about our attachment styles. But if we really look at those detachment styles and really detach from all of that and go back to that pure innocence, to when we came into this world as a whole, and then really ask, does this inner child, feel safe, which is that third question that we have, or just really, what does that inner child need? Then we can actually have some security that we can go back, and we have enough comfort and security to give that inner child safety and security of what they need, because you have looked at what you need right now. I can't go back with a bunch of empty cups looking at my inner child like, oh, what did you need back then? Oh yeah, your mom hit you, and oh, your dad left you, and oh, this person left you. Oh, well, that sucks. Yeah, they're still leaving me over there too. It's like, no, motherfucker, like you gotta come back with some advice, and have that courage and have that fortitude and that knowledge, really, and that intellect to come back and give that. You can't give something if you don't have it, and we need to give ourselves that security and that tether to go back and see what that, inner child does need, but I think that's the thing of, when we haven't figured out what to do with it in this present moment, then we definitely can't bring it into the future. We can't transcend into the future. And we also can't travel back into the past and mend those things, snip those cords, and bring that inner child that may have been left into whatever traumatic experience that you did have, or even if you were a young adult, you can't go back into time and bring that person back so that you can be wholeness embodied in the present, fully embodied, so I think, yeah, I would personally say, yes, my inner child feels very safe, after all of the work that I've done, the visualization, like we take trips together. He be bringing me like into situations that I'm in now that I haven't showed up, or like I missed. And like, I'm very strong with my dreams, right? And like, he'll pull up and be like, yo, like you didn't see that? And I'm like, what you mean? Like, nah, like this is how I felt. And he's like, all right, now that you got over all of that, like let's go check that out. And like, yeah, grab my hand and take me in there. And we're able to see these two different dynamics, of what things are going on, because that's also a relationship that I personally, as a man, went back. And yes, I didn't have, like, my father wasn't present, there when I was there. But instead of like searching my whole life for a father, I became a father. Yes, biologically, but also I became my own inner father to father my younger self as well, by coming into a man that he never saw. And then also I never saw. I created something completely new, and then came back to him and was like, this is what you need. I got you. I got you. Let's go,
Yeah.
So I think if he was here right now, he would say that he's pretty safe.
That is beautiful. I really like, first of all, beautiful segue, by the way. And secondly, like, I really do think, like, just to say to the audience as well, to our audience, that I think probably maybe one of the most important work that we can do is inner child work. I would say that's maybe one of the most transformational, healing, like, because you're absolutely right. Like, regardless of how we look, we're adulting, we've got jobs, we're paying bills, but that little child, and all of the stages of our childhood are still with us. And that's going to show up in different ways in our lives. And I really do think, like, I think you're absolutely right. It's beautiful what you said about, like, the reparenting that has to take place, that almost, then I think there's something inevitable about this as well, like real adulting is like
Mm.
really when you're able to reparent your inner child, because that's when you're
Mm-hmm.
you're preparing for, well, the natural progression of things. Obviously, you know, our parents, they pass, then we become the adults, and then we pass, and then our children become the, you know what I mean? And so you know, that part of yourself, you have to be able to meet that part of yourself as an adult, and like you say, in a way that that part of yourself, your inner child, didn't experience, which is not an indictment to our parents, and you know, obviously whatever they've given us and the world that they brought us. Well, maybe it is an indictment on some parents, actually. Maybe some parents
Right.
do need to be
Right.
indicted, but not
Those
mine.
ones need to
But
be put up on the stand.
yeah, and I mean, you know, like, but you know, none of, like, not my parents weren't perfect, but they, you know, they did their best, and but you know, I didn't come out of childhood unscathed, and
Right.
you know, 100%, like, yeah, that reparenting work for me really meant or means that I've always got myself. Like there's always like that soft cushion to lean on, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for me, it's interesting when you, like, when we ask the question, does my inner child feel safe? I would say sometimes it doesn't. And that's when I know, like, when, like, for me, I'm always checking in with my inner child. Like I'm always checking in, what I sometimes call her my little girl. And like, and there'll be situations that let me know if she's in distress or if there's something happening. Is she happy? Does she feel safe? Does she feel, and that is always a real gauge for me in terms of like the situations that I'm in. So for example, I was in a job just before, no, during the pandemic. Anyway, I left it after the pandemic, and there was this moment where I was like, should I leave this job? Should I leave this job? It's a big deal, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you get used to the status, the money, all of the rest of it. And I was like, you know, it was a good job. I was like, this is, you know, this is good as it gets. Like was an incredible
Mm-hmm.
place to work, and it just felt, but I knew. And then I remember going to, like, it was an ecstatic dance. And then I remember sitting down, like, you know, in the afterwards when we do like the grounding and the meditation. And then
Never.
I remember just checking in with my little girl, and I remember looking down, and it was horrific. She was like she was in a war-torn something, like shaking, like she'd, like, her clothes were all like ripped up. It was like she was absolutely utterly traumatized. And then for me, that was when I was like, I have to leave this job, because I knew it was the job that was putting me in this like really like hyper in survival state. And so in that situation, I know what I need to do, right? I'm taking my child, that part of myself, and I'm protecting it, and I'm saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to do what needs to be done to make sure that you're going to be all right. And that was the decision that led me to leave my job. And then, you know, on and on and on it goes, and then magic happens in your life. I actually really do believe that actually that is maybe one of the most core guidance that you will know, is whether or not you're on the right path or in the right spaces with the right people, is when you can really check in. So again, like, I think it's something that I would say for me, it's something that I continually have to check in with her. And then it's like, okay, is this okay? Does this feel all right? Does this, and then it can kind of really help me know what decisions I need to make in the moment. So I would say generally, yes, because I know what to do to make my inner child feel safe. But definitely there's times when she hasn't, and that's let me know that there's an action that needs to be taken.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I feel like yes. Yes. It is the most powerful work, or one of the most powerful pieces of work that you can do, is really however you can get in touch with it, you know. And I think exercising visualization is huge with that.
Mm,
Um because again, you know, there's so many practices, and I know that, you know, we spoke about all of these esoteric things about going back, and you know, just even like you being the intuitive that you are, and just knowing, you know. And a lot of people don't necessarily have that just knowing, or, you know, even in my position of having that conviction and that devotion or whatever, you know. And it's there's a lot of different tools out there,
mm,
and there's a lot of different practices that you can do, but I think that's where we have to understand like what our actual true power is, you know. And like this is a part of the transcendence thing that we just kind of, you know, come out of,
mm,
is we have to be willing to let go of who we think we are now, you know, also willing to let go of, hey, maybe I wasn't parented right, or maybe I was. And what did that do to me? Maybe I'm privileged. I'm a privileged fuck right now and I can't see certain things, you know? Maybe I need to go back and really look at that, you know? And this is the point, you know, well, not the point, but a facet of meditation, you know. It's also visualizing and tapping into those higher faculties, you know. And this is something I speak about in that course, fine tune healing. And it's exercising those higher faculties like imagination, you know. And we think that, you know, oh, time travel is, you know, bullshit, and we think about it in the practical. But when you think back to where you left your keys at, isn't that time travel? You're using your mind to think about something that already happened, to a moment that already passed. So why not stretch that a little bit further, you know? And it's like when we're in those states, you know, like even in an ecstatic dance or something like that, your body is so transcended, you know, your energy is moving so much, you're open, you're free, and you're able to see more clear. You know, for me, it's the exact opposite. I need to be sitting still for like 2 hours meditating, and then I'm like, I'm in it. I'm in it. In it. All is one at that point, you know? So I would just encourage people to, again, if you're listening to this and you like these questions, and some of them may seem a little off-putting or whatever the case may be, or maybe you just don't have the answers to them, you have to reassure yourself that you do have the answers to them. You know, it's just a matter of how you look, what your devotion is to looking, um, how you are looking, and actually how fucking serious are you about this, you know? And really think about, like you said, you know, when you saw that little girl there, like, what are you actually going to do, you know? And you speak of her in like this war torn place, and like the clothes are torn up, and you like, I'm gonna grab her and I'm gonna mama you. I'm gonna grab you up and I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna protect my little girl, you know? And that's the thing, you know. And it's like we need to have that reassurance and that faith and that conviction to know that when we go back and we make this contact, and whether it be in your future, and this is also, again, not even just for your inner child, but also your future self, when you're stepping into your power, knowing, you know, going in with that confidence, but also humility and that assuredness and that certainty. And you have to have that certainty that's over logic, you know, that this is what it is, and I have it now, and I'm going either into the future, or I'm coming back with it, you know. And I think that's a part of also, you know, how you ever heard of like dress for the job you want? You ever heard that saying?
Yeah, that expression.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the same exact thing. It's like when we start to understand how we're dressing to go into these different places, it's like we need to really understand, like, what am I putting on right now? You know, because most of the time we wake up and we just go into our life. You know, you go into your routine, you don't think about anything. Maybe you get a couple minutes to sit down and you want to meditate and maybe just find some peace, but you already got peace. Give yourself something a little bit more tangible and a little bit more specific to really look for. Like, give yourself a challenge, you know. Let me go back and see what makes my inner child feel safe. What parts of my am I willing to transcend, and what habits is my masculine and feminine, you know, supporting myself in. But also, like, and if you are a little bit more attuned to like your body and the physicality and the somatics, it's like, can you actually, when you actually go meditate and you're thinking about this like inner peace, and I need to find zen, and I'm too stressed out, and no, you're thinking about the stress. But really what you're looking to cultivate is harmony, you know, or you're looking to cultivate peace or bliss or calmness. So focus on that. So it's like we can look at what this last question is like the garment of that inner harmony, you know? Like, what is that inner harmony actually wearing? What is the texture of it? What is the feel of it? You know, like, is it a sound? Is it a place? Is it an environment? Everything has a sensation. We relate as a human. And this is how we really embody things, you know, whether we want to manifest something in the future, or if we want to go back into the past and cut some ties and do some healing and do the work. You know, there's this consistent fluctuation going back and forth and in and out in all different directions. But when we start to look at those textures, and this was just something that we formed of like what that garment is, you know, like, and this is the part of where this wholeness that's embodied, because the body is all about sensations, it's about feeling. And like we kind of explained of going into this introduction was, this is kind of like coming to the dance, you know, and we've spoken about all these different things about the mind, about esotericness, and you know, the arcana, and the different aspects of our mind, and these masculine and feminine balances, and all these different things in the quadrants that are within us. But as we have like expanded out, and now we're coming back in, like this is that dance, and this is where that masculine and feminine are really coming together to actually like meet each other from one side of the ballroom to the other side of the ballroom, and you finally get into that middle, and you're facing each other, and you have like, you know, you make eye contact with that person, you're walking, and you start getting like the bubble guts, and your palms are sweating, and you feel like you're going to trip, but you're really not going to trip, and you're making sure like, did I put my drawers on, did I take out the trash, like all these different things. And you like, what is that garment that, and I'm asking you this, Shaka, like, what is that garment that you would be wearing when you're coming into contact, when that masculine and feminine is coming into contact into that internal harmony?
Oh, it's such a beautiful, beautiful question, and such a beautiful visual as well. And I guess I want to answer this in three parts, I guess, because it was like
Splendid.
There's two things that came up for me as you were kind of talking, which is that like, this feels like, how do I to some extent, the question, it feels to me that how do I externalize what is what is ultimately an internal experience? How do I present that, or not necessarily present it, but how does that show up outside of myself? Not just because it's one thing to have it, oh, like inside, internal, yeah, that's lovely, but then how does that then show up when you're actually in the world? And then it kind of, you know, this came to mind. Why? But there was like, I don't know if you've seen this, or anybody watching has seen this, but there was like this this photographer take pictures of dogs, basically just take a picture of them before, and then call them, like say they're a good boy or a good girl, and then take a picture of them again, and then like basically putting, like comparing all of these pictures of like these like dogs, that like what they look like before, and then literally you see their whole spirit light up. And then it just, and then they've done it with like I think they've done it with women as well. Like they've took pictures of women, and then they told them, I think you're really beautiful. And then they just snap a picture straight away as soon as they've heard that. And then like kind of what that does for them, like what basically how they look. And then I guess, because what I was thinking about was like, you know, how, you know, you could dress the same, you could look the same, you could have the same hair, you could be doing the same thing, but if that inner part of yourself is lit up and is just feeling so good and so alive, that shines, basically, that shines outside of yourself. And then so I feel like on one level, that's the garment. That's the garment. It's something that's internal, but it shines outside. And that feels to me very energetic. That's like something that, like, you know, even actually a client, I saw her, you know, like between my session with her and then I saw her again. I mean, I'm not taking credit for it, but I said, that's a different woman standing in front of me. Like literally, I said, wow, she looked lighter. She looked like, you know what I mean? I could see her inner spirit like shining through, shining forth more. So I feel like that first part, I feel like that is the garment. That is like the internal shining of what's inside. And then I guess then the second part is like, all right, well, how does that then show up in the world, in the relational space, in community, in collaboration? And then I think that's really about, you know, and this is where we, you know, when we're talking about knowing oneself, listening, I think that's a really, really, this is the dance of like really being able to stay in tune with that internal, but also enough to be swayed by the external to some extent, where you're able to meet and dance, right? And so I think like there's something about, I think like Michael Meade talks about it, or maybe it's Joseph Campbell, but like talking about the call, you know, like basically we get our calling, and you know, because it's embedded in your DNA. Like it's not, it's not a thing of like, oh, I'm trying to be this, or I'm wearing this garment and it's like a kind of a mask, or it's not something fake. It's something that's coming from within. And sometimes I even imagine it with my chakras, like when I'm opening up my chakras, and then just as they open that's what opens the chakras, the energy that opens, and then it opens out. So I don't know if this is making sense, but what I mean is that there's something inside that is so strong and so innate and so true and so real that it has no choice to externalize itself in, and that could be in any way. And I feel like, I think we've talked about this, like, the state of the world, like, all hands on decks at this time. We're in a really particular time in history, and it feels like it's a real time when all the light workers need to come, like, basically come alive and start to shine the light within, and let that come outside of themselves. And I think that can come in many different ways, but it has to be authentic to the specific, unique, special code that each of us have. And that's to do with our like childhood, our experiences, our ancestry, like all of these magical things that come together and make us like just this unique person. And then when we cultivate that inner harmony and that inner light, then it has no choice but to shine forth and show up in an authentic way. And I think that's when, we're talking about the dance, right? That's when in the relational space, we're talking about personal relationships. I do think that that's when you've really embodied that that authenticity, and you're in that place, and then someone else is also embodying that authenticity, then I do really feel like that's what draws people together, right? That's what draws them together. So then I feel like there's no need for the nerves. Just get on that dance floor and do what you do, because it almost like the steps have already been written for you, because there's not really anything to do but just express what's within.
Ooh, come through with the harmony and the light and the peace and the love, and oh yes, that is some spirit right there. Hell yeah, I'm feeling that. That is lovely. That is lovely. Woo. Yeah. I definitely feel that. And that's a garment that I would love to don. But I think for me, how this came up was, it was still the same imagery of like this gala, and I'm gonna kind of answer this in two parts. It'll probably be three, but this is two parts how it seems. It's like the preemptive of what is internal for both of them, like in that masculine and feminine, and it's exactly what you said, and like what you were explaining, like that's what I ultimately feel like consistently, right? It's like this masculine and feminine that's on this side, and this light is just coming through, and they just want to express it however which way, and they just come up, and sometimes they come together, and I'm like, what the fuck y'all doing? Oh shit. And it's like me observing this dance, and I think that's where the nerves come in, and like I allow my human to feel that, because that's when I have the human experience, when I see them both kind of like, oh, we about to do this thing together, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fire. And then it comes out, and for me, the garment I would necessarily say for my masculine is like, let's say, slim fit, like trousers, suspenders, a fitted slim dress white shirt, sleeves rolled up like 3/4, they definitely like high boots for sure. And I would probably say like a holster or something like that. And like that's the confidence, that's the harmony that he's coming in with. And like that's how he's showing up to the dance. And there's no telling him like that man, you can't, like, you're not telling him, because that's how I feel like with my masculine presence when I walk into a space, or when I come into a situation, or even when I come into my practice. I'm coming in with this certainty. I'm like, no, this is it. And that's how I'm pulling up to the gala, you know. And this feminine aspect is like, she's just in like a, what are those things called? Not a sarong. It's like one of those, I don't know what these women call it. What is
Sorry.
that? It's not like a, it may be a sari. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah, it's like the long flowing gown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. But like bare feet, no shoes, no high heels, nothing. She just got bare, but you don't even see them. She just coming in flowing, and like tall, regal, and just like deep set eyes, long flowing hair, and she's coming in with this grace to just like, yeah, I'm coming to meet you. And when they come in, it's like they're about business. And that for me is like, because harmony, that gives me harmony. Because for me, harmony has two different meanings. It means, well, it's really not two different meanings. It's supported by two different things, and it's peace and balance.
Mm.
And I feel like that balance is that masculine aspect of harmony. And that peace is like what she brings to that. And when they're both together, like I feel like I'm in harmony, you know?
Mm.
And it's it's less about all of those things that they're showing up like how they should show up as a woman. Like, maybe she's coming in, in this sari or in this gown or whatever, it's called, but she's supposed to be wearing shoes. You can't even see that I'm wearing shoes, but I feel more comfortable and natural. Like I'm coming in here barefoot, I'm grounded, like that's my tribal, natural woman that's coming in. Like that is the feminine aspect for me as she's coming in with that garment. And him, he's clean, he's cut, he's fitted, he's ready, and he's just capable. And it's like that is the balance. And for me, that garment is more so, like you said, like that internal thing that gets expressed. It's like somebody that's confident, when they walk into a room, if a person's confident or not, if a person's is insecure or not, it's an energy thing. So when you're wearing that garment, it's like sometimes we do have to visualize ourselves in that state, and just like, when we're visualizing going back and, mending our inner child, or if we're going into the future and we're stepping into this job, it's that same thing of like dressing for the job you want. No, I'm not fucking Superman, but best believe I'm gonna put that S on my chest and then put, the Home Depot shirt over it, or if you work at the supermarket, put the supermarket shirt over it, but at least you got it on internally. So you walking in there with your chest poked out, you ready, you ready
Ready
to
to.
save an old lady, and you're ready to bust out of it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think we should all cultivate that same, like you spoke about it with the chakras, right? And it's like how they open up and express. And it's like we need to really get an understanding of how those things are opened, how they feel, and also get a visualization of that, because visualization is so powerful. Like, you're fucking adults, and if you don't do that inner child work, then that imagination can't come through, and you can't just imagine some like ridiculousness. And then how can you ever achieve your dreams? Because you're already limited, you're finite, you don't have that playfulness or all those different things. So this is that part of like really bringing it into your body and like really cleansing that self and dressing for that job. That's, for me personally, I'm wearing the outfit all the time. I'm just like, I do my other practices, like I use my palo and I do my saging or whatever, but I don't take that outfit off. That outfit is just, it's on 24/7, 365. But that allows me to walk around with it. Sometimes, one day I might get a stain on it, and the next day I'm like, oh, it's just annoying. Like, now I gotta change my shirt. And yeah, might be a little fucked up and might be off of it. But you come back to the meditation, you come back to the practice, you come back to, you know, the mountains, you come back to nature, you come back and you find these practical things that are in your life that you've used to fill that cup, you know, the things that you have let go of to transcend, the things that you know that support that masculine or support that feminine, you know, and that's how you support this dance that is continuously happening, you know. If somebody has a misstep, okay, cool, pick her up, you know. Oh, if he, you know, stood, you know, he gets a little awkward and he, you know, fucks up the dance, okay, give him some grace, allow yourself to flow with him and support, you know. And that's really the dance that's happening into us internally. And I feel like even just with this talk about having this wholeness, it's about that couple and that union that you have within yourself. Because if we are not internally harmonious, then how are we ever going to be recognizing it outside and then also passing that on to another human being? And I feel like personally, that's what humanity is. It's the act of harmonizing, you know? If we're all fragmentations of this one, how do we harmonize to come back into one, you know? And that's what, you know, namaste means. Like, you know, it's the whole, the prayer, the gesture, it's, you know, the I see you. And, you know, even with the Rastafaris, I and I, it's this recognition of, I know that we look different and that we may seem different, but I see you, and I know that is what it is, you know. And I think that's exactly what harmony is, you know. And it's just like, you know, this tune, and you know, we have this analogy of the dance and the gala, and you know, this grand party. But when this union of this man and this woman, or this masculine and this feminine, come together and they're dancing for this whole song, we have to realize that we can just let go and dance within that and enjoy the music, enjoy the tune, and enjoy all the little things. And that is really the wholeness of this couple that's together. And we're able to embody that because we just fully feel it and we fully are enlivened with it. And we allow life to just pour into us. And that's really that love, you know?
Oh man, I feel enlivened by everything you just said. Like I'm just like envisioning this like hot smoking couple just coming together. Felt all the chemistry in the room. It was like fire, but I love it. But I do, and I think you're right. Like those visualizations that really help you kind of conceptualize this stuff, because some of it can be really complex and out there, or you know what I mean. And but actually like that is like really beautiful, like just bringing in, like you say, the imagination. And I love the outfits, by the way. I like just visioning this.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
complimentary. I'm like, yes.
Listen, in this temple, they be vibing. Vibes is high.
Yes, I can even hear the music. I can see the dot. I can see it. I can see it. You just bring it to life, literally. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the part that we need to like connect to, you know, and I feel like that is a lot of the healing, you know, like once we get into those spaces and once we get into those places of coming to that understanding and really looking and seeing these sides of us, you know, is that we can create that. You know, if we sit here and say, oh, my body's a temple, it's not that like, oh my God, I have to reject this and do that and be an ascetic and da da da. It's like, no, like that's your house, like that's your home, you know, and like your body is your house, but also like it's the communication that you do with it, you know. If I'm not in visualizing it, then the noise from outside is just going to be echoing through my empty ass temple. And then you're going to be busy. You're going to be busy with, you know, what people thought of you, what people said about you, what people did this. It's like you need to sit down, close the goddamn door, be quiet, clear out the noise, light some damn sage, sweep up, put things in their place, you know, organize your temple. And then, yeah, open the doors back up to the public again, you know, and go outside, go chill, go hang out, go shake your ass, do something, you know. But it's like we need that a little bit more, you know, because when we have that silence and we have that ability and that permission to see those parts of ourselves and to really hear, and like you said before, which is I think was so beautiful, is the listening, you know, because listening is, I think, is the ultimate I would say epitome of femininity. It's receptivity, you know, it's the action of receiving, You know, it's listening not just with your ears, but listening with your eyes, listening with your nose, listening with your mouth, listening with your body, listening with your perception, listening with your thoughts, listening with everything, receiving on all those different levels to really fully ensconce your body in this full life experience, you know? And yeah, I think that more of us need to do that with silence, especially men, you know, because we have so much going on. We have, our mind is so busy, and yeah, like this is, again, you know, like I speak about the, you know, the retreats that we're doing here and the events, and the thing is, that is a huge thing, especially for men and just masculine energy in general. And I think that's what women sometimes experience as well, is that they have this preconceived notion that them doing all the time is like masculine energy, and it's like, it's not even that. It's just that you think being busy is masculine energy. It's like, no, actually men are actually like very precise. Like we want to be efficient. We don't want to just do a that's some other niggas that you just see doing, running around like a chicken with their head chopped off, doing the most. Like, no, that's not it. Like a man is just really precise. I'm gonna wait, boom, then it's action. You know, when I know that the timing is like, bang, you know, I take my shot. And I think that's where what we're looking to do is like shift that concept, you know, because men are so busy in the mind. And like even here in Colombia, right? This is just kind of like a little ending here a little bit, because I know we may be pressed for time, but who knows? They have this thing called a popolo, right? And it's basically like a calabasa, and they have a stick, and there's a bunch of other things that go with it. I don't want to go into the history of it, but it's basically like a meditation, right? And it's really actually like a representation. One, yes, it is to silence the mind, because it was also given to men from women, because women have this higher sensitivity, and they see that men, for this, like it was a story of this woman seeing this man in this way of being so busy, being so always in his thoughts, always in his mind, and she gave that to him to calm down so that he could sit there and work on it. And then there's other concepts to it and other aspects that are a little bit more spiritual. But yeah, it is this representation of a spiritual woman, like for this man to have a spiritual woman, to have a practice, not necessarily like a physical partner to have sex and do all these things. It's not about that. It's about this thing that keeps the mind quiet and keeps it busy on a subtle level, so that the spirit can come in and you can actually listen and receive. So you can still have your masculinity, but you are also receiving in that sense. And that for me was like a beautiful, let's say, construct of this wholeness, you know, because this is a physical practice that these men do, and it's also given to them like with their partners as well. And I think it's a beautiful practice to have when you're in partnership, when you're building, when you're doing these amazing things. So yeah, I think that kind of settles up like our dilemma of what things do we do to actually, you know, maintain this embodiment, you know? And it's not that wholeness is a thing that you're going to be able to reach, but it's a state that that you're ultimately coming in and out of, and to develop the faith and the practice and the consistency to keep remembering that you're going to come back to that wholeness at some point, whether it be in a day, whether it be in a month, a year, whatever. But it's about your consistency and how much space you want to allow between those moments of wholeness, you know?
Beautiful, 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 beautifully said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Received.
And you're right, you know, just maybe just add just little things at the end.
Yeah.
I think just for our audience to say that, like, the practices that we do, they're not, you know, they are there to help us when we are in those moments of disconnect, when we're in those moments being in the wilderness, when we're not like fully sure, you know, those the practice, the when we feel good. That's why discipline is so important, because that's what carries us in those moments when, you know, we don't feel so good. But because the practice is strong, you know that you're going to get back on that path. You know that it's only a matter of time before you get back into that place of harmony. And I do really think that's really important, where practice is, where that's the importance of practice. And then just lastly, I think on the point about, the work, the beautiful work that you're doing with men, generally, in terms of men's work at the moment, and, it's a really, really growing concept, men stepping up and stepping into the space. And, and I think what I would say for women is that, like, or women and men really, but, I think the work is the same. I feel like for both the men and women, the work is the same. It's the same work, but we're working with different themes. We're working with slightly different archetypes. We're working with slightly different, in slightly different ways. There's different things that need to be called forth in us, or that speak to us or speak to the deepest part of our souls. But I think ultimately the work, is the same. That we are transcending those parts of self that need to be transcended, that prevent us from being things as they really are.
Yes, thank you for that. And that is exactly where we need to be, is to see things where they are, to really embrace this wholeness and embody it. So I think we can wrap up there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Shaka, so much for just sharing, opening your shakas, and just giving so much of what it means to transcend, what it means to have that inner child and feel safe, and also at times not feel safe, and also understand that we can be in this beautiful, graceful place in this process, but also come from a place of rocking tough with our Afro puffs, raging,
Oh, too bad. So
but ultimately that is the balance, and that is embodiment of wholeness, at its finest. So thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we're going to go a little bit deeper into what we were just finished talking about, which was our higher faculties and the wisdom behind those. So definitely check out the description if you want to refer to any of the questions. Feel free to follow us in any of the links that are below. And also, now that you reached the end of this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. I dropped it 3 times already. So stop being lurkers and hit that subscribe button. Even though you're really not subscribing, but subscribe and let us know that you fucking with us on the motherfucking podcast. So until next time, thank you, beautiful Shaka, for showing up, showing out, and showing us yourself. Thank you to me for being here and receiving and welcoming in all this gratitude. And I send you appreciation. Thank you, Max, for being here. And I thank all of you guys for tuning in, for listening to us, share ourselves, expose, and help to raise this vibration as we go forward in this beautiful life that we exactly get to experience all together. Thank you guys. Until next time.
Till next time.
If you like this episode, please support the podcast and the channel by subscribing, liking, sharing, or donating. You will also find all of the show notes and questions in the description, along with important links and contact details. We look forward to seeing you next time here with us on this MF Quadrant.